All right, if you're in and around the booth, we're going to get going with the next presentation here. And we're in for a real treat. This Nikon ambassador, Mr. Corey Rich, and I have known each other for quite a long time. We've probably worked on about 25 different projects together that included both still and video. And Corey is a Nikon ambassador, and he started off as a rock climber. I'm sure he's going to give you a little bit of background on what he does, but now works within his own film company, does a lot of small footprint production, does some bigger footprint productions. But we also asked him when the Z-Series camera came out to do something that was not so big in scale, something that was achievable by just about anybody that was getting into video. So let him come up here and explain what he has done with the movie Morning. Ladies and gentlemen, Nikon ambassador Corey Rich. Watch the water.
Thanks, Mike. Well, thanks. Today I'm actually just going to talk about the joy of shooting video. Really, it's the joy of capturing content that's going to wow people. Mike alluded to the fact that I had the opportunity to help launch the Nikon Z7 camera. And for a guy that really loves shooting video, I have been maybe at the front of the pack waiting for a mirrorless camera. And no one celebrated more, arguably, than me when the Nikon Z7 was launched, because for video shooters, it's a huge advantage. It really allows you to kind of push your creativity. The form factor and the design, the idea of looking through an electronic viewfinder really changes the way that you can think about shooting video content. I travel a lot. Like many of the photographers and filmmakers on this stage, I'm gone anywhere from half of the year to 3/4 of the year. And so when projects land in my lap where I have the ability to try to shoot closer to home, it's something that I really gravitate toward. And so when the Nikon Z7 project kind of fell in my lap, I thought, what could I do? And I always try to prioritize projects as how can I do the things that I love? And the things that I love shooting, I love telling stories, I love being outside, and I now have a 5-year-old girl, and I thought, how can I be close to home and see my daughter and my wife each night and not be on an airplane? And so I kind of cooked up, and oftentimes the way that projects start, it's brainstorming. I find that my most creative space is out walking. I'll go for a walk in the woods, and usually with no headphones in, it's just me walking, and I'm watching the dog run around. And I start kind of just thinking through ideas. And occasionally I'll take my iPhone and I'll voice memo into the iPhone the ideas as I'm walking, because later I can reference that voice memo. And I cooked up this idea of what do we all do before we go to work in the morning? And in a mountain town like Lake Tahoe, California, people oftentimes have kind of an entire life before they show up for their 9-to-5 job. And that's going ski touring, going mountain biking, going to the gym, going out and taking pictures. And so I cooked up this idea, which was I wanted to show what a mountain bike adventure looks like. What does it look like for a single individual to go out and ride his bike before he shows up in the office? So what I'm going to do is show you this video, and then we're going to deconstruct it over the next 20 minutes or so and talk about my methodology, how I shot it, why I shot it in certain ways. And one of the motivations behind shooting this was to keep it simple, as Mike described. I'm oftentimes on shoots where we have 25, 30 people on the crew, and sometimes it's just me. And this was somewhere in between. There were 3 or 4 of us that worked on this project. Most of the footage was me holding a camera, or Bly Gillies, who works with me, holding a camera, looking through the electronic viewfinder. So let me share the video with you. All of this was shot within 10 miles, 15 miles of my home over about 5 different mornings in Lake Tahoe. Mostly mornings and a few evenings that we made to look like morning. It's a lot harder to get up early than stay out late. So here it is, morning, and then we'll kind of deconstruct it.
Hey, how was your morning? Fine.
So kind of the concept being, what do you do before work? That was the idea in shooting this. So now let's deconstruct it, right? So we've shot this film, and I want to point out, so what we shot on was we had 2 Nikon Z7 cameras. We had a 24 to 70 millimeter kit lens, the f4 lens, the 35-1.8, and the 50-1.8. So it was shot on those 3 lenses. And of course, I begged the team at Nikon. I said, oh, come on, can I use the adapter so that I can use longer lenses and wider lenses? And I kind of like being forced into a corner where I have to work with a specific set of lenses because it forces you to flex that creative muscle. So what I did is I pulled screenshots of virtually every frame in this video. And the way that I do this, I talked about going for a walk and brainstorming the idea, and then eventually I go into the office and on a whiteboard, I start kind of brainstorming the story arc of how this is going to work, formulating in my mind what is the final edit going to look like, trying to preconceive how do I want this piece to be received by an audience. And I wanted it to feel mundane, like almost counterintuitive. You know, we talk about a lot in social media. Keith and Mike were just talking about it, and it's something that I talk about with clients a lot. We want to hook our audience in the first 3 to 5 seconds because our attention span is so minimal. And so I kind of went at this backwards, right? This does not hook me usually, seeing a printer spit out paper. So I created a little montage of just kind of the mundane stuff that we do in an office. And my rationale was, this is, you know, I think everyone will be surprised when they see these kind of fairly mundane, uninteresting visuals of doing things like printing paper, stapling, using a calculator, typing on a keyboard. And this is what it looks like. I mean, this is a real simple production. We're on a tripod. Here's the camera. There's no matte boxes attached. And, you know, I grabbed our intern, and our intern is, you know, one after another, you know, paper hole punching. We did actually run some external audio. This is just a tiny Zoom recorder that we're using to kind of get it a little closer. Oftentimes, the camera angle might not be ideal for actually capturing that sound. And that rich sound design, it really helps the mind. You don't notice that you're hearing that sound, but as you're seeing the hole puncher, you're seeing the stapler, you know, hearing the stapler. So I'm thinking about that all the time. How am I going to kind of make this go a kind of a level higher in terms of production value? So I went to an office down the street. Again, that was my goal. Like, I wanted to keep this simple and really close to home. My very good friend Chris McNamara owns a company called Outdoor Gear Lab, and they review outdoor equipment. They're like the Consumer Reports of outdoor equipment. And so we intruded their office one morning. We bought everybody lunch. That oftentimes works. You buy them lunch, and then you can kind of screw up their day. And I had this preconceived set of shots. We were going to shoot, you know, the guys sitting on their computers working. It's a full office. You know, I had in my mind this vision of, you know, walking in with the dog. There's a funny story about the dog, by the way. The main athlete in this piece, his name is Kyle Smain, local kid, grew up in South Lake Tahoe, world-class athlete. He's competed in the X Games, has been this close to going to the Olympics now twice as a skier. But he's a gifted athlete. He can ride a bike, he can ski, he's incredible. And so I told him in the beginning, I said, Kyle, are you willing to do this? It's going to require 4 or 5 days of your time. And he said, oh, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to do it. And we'd love to have a dog in the scenario. Do you have a dog? And he said, oh, yeah, I've got a dog. And so on I think we shot this office scene first, and so the dog became totally integrated into the piece. And then the next morning we shot getting ready at the car, and the dog was part of the piece. And then the first day that we were going to go and ride bikes, he said, oh, the dog's like 27 years old and can barely walk. And I thought, Kyle, how do we incorporate the dog into this entire shoot, right? Because we have this continuity issue. And so if you were critical when watching this piece, you notice, that's weird. The dog shows up and then disappears and shows up and disappears. And that's why. The dog is not 27, but 15 and arthritic. And so for the shot that we'll get to later, we had to carry the dog virtually up the trail so that he could stand there and watch his master jump off the jump. But so the dog is in and out of the piece, So we shoot the reverse angle. In filmmaking, you're always thinking about, you're establishing the scene, you're shooting medium shots, close-ups, you're shooting the master, and then you're flipping around and shooting the reverse. So this is the reverse of he's entered the office. Here it is, we were testing. This is a trick that we'll use oftentimes. The guy in the blue shirt, Steven, the guy that was kind of he says, how was your morning? He had to go and actually do some work. I mean, he had a real job that we were interrupting. And so we'll stick somebody else in that spot while we're trying to figure out the framing. This is almost all the time we'll have an ME1 microphone. It's a Nikon microphone that actually quite a good microphone on the camera so that we're always capturing high quality sound. You just never know when you want to do a sound up in the edit. Having sound really affords you more opportunity in post. This was our voiceover session. This is my office in Lake Tahoe, California. You can see I like to keep photo desks on my book, photo books on my desk for inspiration. So AJ's our intern. We had, there weren't many lines. It's just a couple of lines. How was your morning? And he said, fine. So here we are. We're recording the sound. And by the way, it's worth saying, you sometimes talk about syncing sound. We had already shot the spot, but our quality of sound wasn't good enough. So he's literally watching the video while he's then re-recording. We're dubbing the audio. We're replacing the audio inside of our piece because the audio quality wasn't good enough. So that's what we're doing here. Shooting the coffee cup. Now, what's important in this is that we're sequencing. I have a shot list in my back pocket, and I know that while we're in this office space, I have to get the establishing shot. I need to see him walk through the door. I need to see the dog. I need to, we tried to use this coffee cup as sort of a hook. This coffee cup brings you back to that opening scene when he's sitting there at the car and he sets it down. I really love, drones have changed the world, both in photography and in filmmaking, and gosh, I guess even in delivery of merchandise that we order online. But I'm always trying to incorporate drone footage when it makes sense. So we went out to an area called Hope Valley, and just outside of Lake Tahoe, and did some shots of Kyle driving his Subaru. And what I've learned, both in photography but also in filmmaking, what it takes is you just keep on shooting, right? You get there early. This is like a classic mantra, show up early and stay late. And that's what we do. We showed up early, it was pitch black. We set up the drone, we got ready, we started shooting as soon as there was just enough light so that we could have exposure on the road and have some glowing kind of blue landscape in the background. But we started shooting. This is what it looks like. This was exciting to finally have the Z7 because it's significantly lighter than the D850, which has been our go-to DSLR for shooting video for years now. And so on a free-fly Alta, it almost added 25% flight time because the payload is so much less. And so we're putting this on a robust drone. This is our Sprinter van. We show up early in the morning, we set up the drone. This is Bly Gillies, who's operating the camera. Bly works in my office. He's responsible for a good portion of this project. I always try to kind of pay accolades where they're due. This is Sean Haverstock, who's flying the drone. So typically when we're flying a big drone like the Alta, there's usually 3 of us. It's one person is framing the camera. He's controlling where it's pointing. That's Bly. Sean is flying it. And I'm directing kind of the whole scene. I'm saying to Sean, okay, like the car is ready to go. I want you to cross at 45 degrees over the road. And it's kind of this choreographed routine. We try it 2 or 3 or 4 times, and by the 4th, every once in a while, we get lucky and we nail it the first time. Usually not. Usually it requires just trying it a few times, figuring out the kinks, what's working, what's not working. Then I jumped inside the car with Kyle, and this is just real simple. It's just handheld. I'm sitting there with the camera, kind of my elbows pressed into my chest. There's internal stabilization in the Z7, which is kind of amazing. So the sensor is actually being stabilized as you're shooting. So I'm just kind of shooting little details. I really loved this shot. I was in the back seat, and the dog is poking his head out, looking out the window. Again, I'm anchoring myself to, we need the dog later in the shoot. And so then we did some car-to-car stuff. And again, this is real low-key. This is hanging out the side of the van. Yep, this is how we did it. This is not OSHA approved. He has no safety belt, no harness. But we're not moving fast. You don't need the car to move that fast in video when you're shooting at 24 frames per second. He's using just a small Movi, so it's a gimbal stabilization device. And then this is what I'm describing. Here's Bly is sitting down here, and he's controlling what the camera is looking up. So tilting up, tilting down, panning right, panning left, checking focus. Sometimes in these, and again, I'm in that role of I'm communicating on a walkie-talkie to the driver of the car, and I'm telling the driver of the van, our intern, how fast to go. This same day, our intern backed our van into a boulder and dented the back of it, but that's just part of production, right? You're out there and you're trying to make things happen quickly. Sometimes I'll focus the camera. We'll put a focus device so that you're dividing up the responsibilities, and the probability of failure go down if everybody has their piece of the job and you get a higher quality product. Of course, we thought we could make it a little more unsafe, so we moved them up onto the roof, and it was a nice angle, but we ended up going for the kind of more floor level, road level shot. And so, but these are small gimbals. That's the advantage to this Z7 camera. You don't need a robust Movi Pro. We're using an old M5. I mean, you can pick these things up for less than $1,000 online, and it adds production value, really sophisticated looking footage. So new morning, we go out, and it's him getting ready, right? So we start shooting in the dark, and I'm just thinking montage. What would tell the story of getting ready to go and ride your bike? Taking the bike off the car, he pulls it off. It's okay if it's a little soft. And here's what it looks like. Again, I'm showing you this because most of the footage in this film, aside from some of the true hero footage, it's shot literally holding a camera. I mean, that's it. I have a camera with a video plate so I can drop it into a tripod easily, microphone on top. He goes to drink the coffee. Here I am, I'm shooting the coffee cup, ME1 microphone still up top. You know, and you're always thinking about get the safe shot, right? Establish your scene, get the safe shot. And then in still photography and video, it's how do I now make this more complex? How do you back up and shoot through something, add a foreground, layer it, frame the shot? And so now I'm anchoring it back to the car. I'm shooting from inside the car, outside the car. You know, and I talk about, I'm a believer in the less equipment you use, oftentimes the better the footage looks because you're focused on the actual moment. You're focused on making visuals. So here I am. I mean, this is a real simple setup, right? You need a camera, a pair of jeans, shoes, and a T-shirt. And you can do this. I mean, it's actually stable. I'm just resting it on my knee, and it creates this sort of doc-style verite footage. It feels handheld. It feels organic. It feels alive. And so I'm shooting that from inside the car. I go outside. I shoot the coffee cup. That's how I shot the coffee cup. I just rested my hand right on the car. Just the screen is flipped open. It's dark enough that I can see the back of the camera. You know, then I squat down on my knee, and I shoot him clipping his pedal. I think this is the 50-1.8, which, by the way, is like the sharpest lens that I've ever seen. It's incredible. It's just spectacular shooting with that 50mm lens. And then, of course, I wanted to kind of tell the story of he takes off with the bike. So he pedals really hard, the dirt flies up, and that's it. I'm just, sticking the camera in the dirt. I'm framing the shot. I have him do it 3 or 4 times. You know, that's another lesson that you never get it in one take. I mean, sometimes that's all you have in the true doc world and the true editorial photojournalism world. You get one opportunity. But in this environment, I have he spins his bike tire, dirt flies up. I think I got it, but let me get a backup shot. And so we move 3 feet to the left where the dirt is virgin and untouched, and he spins his tire again. Dirt flies up. Okay, I think I feel safe. So we move on. Now we go out and we're kind of shooting him riding up the hill. There's the dog. This was one of the dog's few cameos in the piece. He's riding up the hill. I get a close-up shot. In this case, we used the Movi again, because while it seems like the bike isn't going that fast, he's moving pretty quickly up the hill. And it's so fast that I can't just run next to him with the camera. There's stabilization built into the sensor, but not enough stabilization to actually run next to the bike. So in this case, here's Sean Haverstock. You saw him flying the drone earlier. He's running next to Kyle as he rides up the hill, and then that allows Bly and I to frame the shot as he's running up the hill. Now we go, and this was kind of the most exciting part of the whole shoot. Oftentimes as photographers or as filmmakers, we see locations, whether it's at our home or halfway around the world, where you dream of going out and shooting at that location. And I had walked on this rock slab near Kirkwood, California. I always thought, boy, it would be amazing to get a mountain bike up on this rock slab. And so we went out and we shot on this rock slab, but what was so incredible was integrating a drone and a Movi. So that scene where it's kind of the first time you see him riding, we establish I'm sort of 45 degrees behind him. It's Sean running with the Movi. That's how it happens. He's running on very uneven ground and doing some pretty high-tech jumps out there with the Movi. I like to really, when we're using prototypes, I like to push it. I think there's like an honor badge if you bring back a broken camera. Brian's smiling over there. I don't know if he agrees. But so we're kind of pushing it a bit. And then we brought the drone out. And that allowed for incredible angles. To be able to look down at a mountain biker on a granite slab. We could have done this for days. We were having so much fun. There were big forest fires in California when we were shooting. And so you can see it's really hazy in the background. And in the moment, I was disappointed because it limited how far we could ride with our bikes to shoot. It was just so smoky, it would get in your lungs. So we kind of had to reel it in a little bit and stay closer to the car, closer to the trailhead. But it was also this blessing in that when you get hazy, overcast conditions, the light doesn't change that much. So you're not dependent on, you can shoot in midday light or closer to midday light because you have this big soft box over your head, and it made that distant background look more dramatic. So this is with a drone. You can see right here, we're pretty close to this tree, right? So the drone flies past the tree and reveals the mountain biker on the ridgeline. And that's one of those things with flying a drone or moving a camera. You want foreground objects that you're moving in front of. It's just there's a roll of like a 20-sided dice every time you fly a drone close to a tree because you're far away and you don't know when you're going to strike that limb and the drone flies out of the sky. But it made for some pretty incredible footage. Riding on the ridgeline, and again, I'm thinking, even with the drone, we think the same way that we think when shooting with a tripod or handheld with the camera. You want that wide shot that really establishes where is this happening? What does this slab, this granite feature look like? And then you do the medium shot, and then you do the close-up shot. And if you can do it all with the drone, you do it with the drone, and then you do it on sticks, and then you do it handheld. And if you can shoot a point of view shot, you do the point of view shot. But I'm always prioritizing. If I don't have time to do everything, what's most important? And here it was get the wide establishers. This is what it looks like. We're using, again, same free-fly Alta with a Movi M5. This is what it looks like. I showed this to my wife recently, and this is Bly Gillies. He's framing. Sean is flying in the background. And it looks like I'm actually doing nothing, and that was her comment. She said, so what's your role? You're just standing there doing nothing. And I said, no, I'm directing. Like, this is, I'm directing. But there is a lot of truth to, the truth is you can do this alone. You can show up with a small drone where the camera is integrated. It's just when you're that one-man band in this situation, your opportunity to direct, think about composition, frame the shot, just all of that, you begin, something gives. And so this is sort of the sweet spot when we're flying. It's me directing two people, someone flying, someone framing. And so that's really what's happening. I'm on a walkie-talkie yelling to Kyle, deciding which route we're going to fly. And so there's our drone above. We just use two monitors, and one person is looking at framing. I'm usually over one of their shoulders. Sean is mostly worried about, he's actually looking at a monitor down here, which is just a little lipstick camera, and it's just pointed straight ahead so he can see if he's about to hit a tree. And he's like kind of looking up at the camera frequently when we're shooting on this style of drone, and then he's occasionally looking at the framing to figure out what's happening here. So, we're conscious of how close we're getting to our athlete. That's getting that kind of medium shot just behind Kyle. Now we're running next to him. Again, he's getting ready to ride. It's just handheld. A lot of locking the camera into my chest and really relying on that internal sensor stabilization to make interesting shots. So here we are, this just long lens. I think I shot this on a monopod. And so I, again, on a 24 to 70, at 70 millimeters, I'm sort of getting close and then pushing it even closer to create that sense of a longer lens. I'm creating that sense of compression by just getting closer. So again, not sophisticated. You can see the back of a monopod sticking out here. And I'm just leaning forward with a little video head on the front of the monopod, and I'm shooting those two frames. This is top down. That's the next frame. There's the drone in the air. Here I'm just getting closer. And I'm showing a lot of these behind-the-scenes images of me just holding a camera, because this is really important. If there's one takeaway, one really important takeaway, to shoot video does not mean buying an entire arsenal of equipment. I've shown you a few frames of the drone and the Movi, but 80% of what we shot, the majority of what we shot is just like this. It's handheld or on a monopod that you already own for shooting still photos. It's just instead of depressing that shutter button, you're pressing the record button. So here he is. And we shoot a lot of footage that never sees the light of day. You know, he rides down the hill, we shoot the footage. He has to ride back up, so we shoot the footage of him riding back up. Not one of the riding uphill clips made the cut. Now, one of the other secrets of filmmaking, when you have enough time, this was a quick turn and burn project. Nikon called, they said, come up with an idea, shoot it, it's due in a couple of weeks. And of course, I procrastinated, I was busy, I was traveling, so I, of course, like most others, wait until the final week before it's due to actually start the project. And so we kind of were doing these staggered. We'd go out in the morning, shoot, then we'd start editing midday, and then that evening we'd go back and shoot. And so as the piece was being edited, I could see the holes, and I realized, gosh, we're missing something here. We need more visual diversity. And so this was a scene. This was, I think, the very last scene that I shot. I just needed like a different environment. And so maybe it was the final morning of the shoot, like it was due that evening on East Coast time. I went out at 6 in the morning with the mountain biker, just me, a camera, and my Camelback, and I jumped off my bike, and we did this 4 times, and I did kind of a wide shot, a medium shot, had him blur through it, and that led to I could fill 4 more seconds of the video, right? Because in video, you're thinking in terms of seconds. I had a deliverable which was, give us 2 minutes. And so 2 minutes is, well, how many 2-second clips, or how many 1-second clips, or how many 4-second clips? So again, real light and fast. We're just throwing cameras in bags, looking at kind of dust flying, more handheld footage. There was another drone sequence. We went into this really cool burned out tree area. Again, really close to home, somewhere I've always wanted to shoot, but never. I'm always thinking about where could I shoot? I have this Rolodex of locations. And when the opportunity comes to go out and do a project like this, I roll through that Rolodex in my head. Boy, wouldn't it be cool to see someone riding a mountain bike in a burned out area? So we got the drone back up in the air, found some kind of cool turns. We shot it from the ground. I panned at 70 millimeters. Again, handheld most of the footage. That was a cool turn. And you're always looking for kind of where's the geometry? What are the cool lines from above? Because the world looks very different when you're looking down. So here we are. We're looking at the framing and the monitors. Then we went out. I knew this jump sequence was going to be neat. We needed some action. We needed diversity even within the world of mountain biking. So, shoot a detail, get him up in the air. This is where we kind of carried the dog and like set him in that location. But it worked. I mean, we got one shot at this. The dog kind of looked the right way. He did the jump, and then the dog wasn't interested. Walked away and laid down in the shade. And so, but we got that shot. We get him landing. You try things that don't work. We put the camera on someone's shirt, jumped over it, just wasn't quite wide enough. This shot made it, the shot from the camera to kind of the last round of edits. And then we decided, not strong enough. If we had a fisheye or the new 14-30, probably would have made the edit. He pets the dog, some details of the brake, back out on the rock slab, like real simple this shot. Super shallow depth of field, shooting wide open, ND filter on the camera almost at all times. Bike rolls away. This is it. It's just the camera sitting on granite, wide open. One thing that you'll notice is this is not part of the Nikon lens, the Nikkor lens. We put a step-up filter so that all of the front of our lenses, or if possible, they're 77 millimeters, so that all of our filters fit on the front of that camera. Crossing the river, crossing the log. This footage was pretty impressive. Bly Gillies, who shot some of this footage, he rode a bike right next to Kyle on the log, and he just held the Movi out, and he did it like twice, didn't fall off the bike, and it made for a really incredible long clip because it's a 4 or 5 second ride down that log. I'm shooting little details, coming down this rock garden. I'm just laying in the dirt. Here he comes, barrels around the corner. And now this was a really important shot. We wanted to get dust flying. And so I set myself up for this shot. Oftentimes what we'll do is stick a rock or we'll mark the ground. I'll say, hit this dirt. And so I'm looking through the screen. I'm looking at the back of the camera. And I didn't intend for him to nail me with the dirt, but he kind of interpreted it a different way. And so, I mean, he absolutely just nailed me with dirt. You can see there's a lot of dust on that camera. And I don't know if this will play. Let's see. Oh, we might not have volume. Cover the camera in dirt, but that's pretty good.
It's a sure sign of a good roost, right?
That was awesome. So, you know, they say in like in the manual or in like Photography 101, the things you keep away from your camera are dirt. But it turns out it handled the dirt pretty well. I sort of blew it off, wiped it off of my pants, and we kept on shooting. So definitely a weatherproof camera. I'm getting the signal that I'm running out of time. But I guess I want to leave you with this. I hope in watching this presentation, one of the takeaways is shooting video does not need to be something that's intimidating. It doesn't need to be that you go to the other side of the planet. There are projects like this in your backyard. The equipment that's needed, it can be a camera and a lens. It's a matter of just embracing the idea that you're going to go out repeatedly, you're going to experiment, you're going to push yourself, and that will lead to creating great content. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I'll be around if there's more questions. Thank you.